Storytelling. It's a way to keep heritage alive, to reflect on the past. The best storytellers can captivate you, taking you to a magical, vibrant, colourful and mystical world. In Africa, these storytellers are particularly important. They tell tales of slavery, war and colonialism, but still manage to infuse their audience with optimism for the continent. The best storytellers are energetic, funny and inspiring, drawing their listeners into their world. Well, my next guest can certainly be considered among the best in his field. Born in Kamakwi in Sierra Leone, Usifu Jalloh is an award-winning performer who's working in the arts and education sector for more than 20 years. Before we speak to Usifu, let's see him in action.
And this woman, she said she wants to be known. She wants to be known as the kindest woman that's ever lived. She wants to be known as the kindest woman in her village. But not just her village. She wanted to be known as the kindest woman in the whole. Not just the world. She wanted to be the kindest woman in the whole. Not just the universe. She wanted to be the kindest woman in the whole. Not just the planet. She wanted to be the kindest woman in the whole. Not just the galaxy. She wanted to be the kindest woman in the whole. I say, I want to tell you a story.
And you are here to tell a story. Usifu, welcome to This Day Live. First question. What are you? Because I don't think storyteller kind of tells everything here.
Well, I describe myself, as I said, I'm a storyteller, I'm an educator, I'm a motivator. I am an architect for social change and cultural awakening. That is how I describe myself.
That's a lot to get on a little business card, though, isn't it?
It is certainly a lot to get on a business card.
And I mean, you tell your stories with the I don't know, how do you put it, the energy and the enthusiasm that, say, a preacher would deliver a sermon to his crowd, and everybody seems to be hanging on every word.
And indeed, the most powerful storytellers have been those that stand up and then preach to us. I mean, we can go along the way. Winston Churchill, a powerful storyteller. I dare say Adolf Hitler, a powerful storyteller. Mahatma Gandhi, Stephen Biko. You know, you go on down the road. These are all amazing storytellers in very different genre. And to me, it's no different to the to sitting down in the village or socially and telling stories. And I feel we are telling stories from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. Corporate organizations are constantly telling us stories. Nike telling us stories. McDonald's constantly telling us stories.
Eat our burgers.
Indeed, and they tell us so.
But you mentioned some big names there, but what sort of storyteller does that make you then?
I say I'm a mirror. I am there and I'm showing you this is who you are. Do you like it? If you do not like it, what are you going to do about it? And so there's three things I pursue. Number one, to get you to listen. Number two, to remember what you've listened. And number three, to act on what you have listened to.
Does this mean you tell a story and then you ask questions later?
Well, sometimes
you test your audience.
Usually if I'm with children, sometimes I'll kind of get them, you know, and I'll ask a question. But I think with adults, I tend to tell a story. And then I want to leave them to actually either go home if they get this story, and then maybe years later they get it, sometimes straight away. And I do not interpret my story for my audience. I want my audience to actually, I want them to use their own imagination.
So you're a guide as much as a storyteller?
Very, very much. Very, very much.
History seems to sort of play a big part in the stories that you tell. Why is this sort of oral history very important?
It's important. If we go back in biblical times, today's Sunday, we go back, David, there's a passage about David playing the harp for King Saul. And when King Saul was troubled, David would come the griots who would play an instrument similar to what David played. David played an instrument called the krar, which we find in Ethiopia today. Today in West Africa, we have the kora. And the griots would play the kora in the king's compound to inform the king of his greatness, of his ancestry. But they were also the newspaper. They were the ones who would inform the king of what the society is saying. And if you're a wise king, you would listen.
Through the power of music. And you play the djembe drum.
Yes.
And this is the kongoma.
This is the kongoma, yes. Yes, yes.
Why is that musical element important? We saw it in that clip there. You're sort of banging away on the drums,
yes.
sort of whipping the crowd into a frenzy.
Well,
is that what it's for?
It is definitely for that. The key to opening the brain to remember is emotion. And one of the things to use to trigger emotion is music, rhythm.
Go on, give us a burst.
So,
Oh, that'll do. We could actually just listen to that all day. Why is that bit important? And
yeah.
Does it help you remember how to tell the story by doing it through song? Because there are other languages like Welsh where the music is exceptionally important to storytelling.
Yes, and I think most of the stories that I remember from my childhood, I remember them through the songs in the stories.
And that's in Sierra Leone.
And yes, that's in Sierra Leone. I remember them through the songs, and those songs, you know, trigger so many different emotions. And hence I put a lot of songs in my stories. And the songs would range from my own traditional songs to, you know, my old man is a dustman. He wears a dustman's hat.
But you do a Sierra Leone
as that, as long as it's something that I can put in there to help my audience remember what the experience that they're going through.
But is this about you telling stories about your childhood in Sierra Leone, or is it much broader than that? I mean, you've mentioned
so much broader. Yeah. So much broader than that. So much broader. My grandma used to say to me, tickle them. When their mouth is open with laughter, you pour in the truth. Mm-hmm. We learn best when we're very relaxed.
Is this sugarcoating a sort of bitter pill here?
Absolutely so. And, you know, there's a story about truth. And truth was left in the edge of the village, naked and cold. You see, the villagers were afraid of truth's nakedness. And Parable was passing by. Parable saw truth and took truth in, fed truth, and clothed truth with his story, and sent truth back out. When truth went out, well, truth did not even have to knock on the door. They invited truth in. Why? Truth is now clothed in story.
We could just wind you up and set you off, couldn't we? Well, we could do this until 10:30. You work a lot with children.
Yes.
Why is that important?
Because I believe in feeding the roots. You can water all the leaves all you like. If you do not water the roots, the plant will die. And
He even answers that question with another analogy.
That's the storyteller, you know. It's children are incredibly important, and sometimes my stories are very political, and I really feel they need to invest in the children, invest in grassroots, and children are primary to our future and to the success of an African nation, period.
Very briefly, because we're running out of time,
Yes.
Where can we see you next?
Well, next week, no, this coming Saturday, I'll be performing at Westminster at the Just Festival. Anybody can check that out. Or they can just, my website, usifujalloh.com, which is spelled USIFU Jalloh.com. I'm also doing a big weekend festival coming up very soon in Epping Forest. But if anybody goes to my website, they can access all of that.
Usifu, it's been brilliant to speak to you and listen to you and to hear you play. We could talk to you again.
Thank you.
Much more in the future. Do come back and join us here on This Day Live. You're watching This Day Live.